My pesky student has the wrong remote is a fascinating example of contemporary queer storytelling that uses an awkward, comedic misunderstanding as a vehicle to explore deeper questions about power, visibility, and self-acceptance in queer female identity. While the premise may sound like a lighthearted mishap, the situation itself metaphorically represents the tension between private identity and public exposure, a recurring theme in lesbian and bisexual women's experiences, especially within spaces of authority such as academia. Kylie, the professor, and Aubry, the student assistant, embody two sides of a generational dialogue in queer womanhood: the older woman who has learned to compartmentalize and control her desires for the sake of professionalism and social respectability, and the younger woman who embodies curiosity, fluidity, and a more open cultural attitude toward sexuality. The wrong remote becomes more than a prop. It symbolizes the accidental yet meaningful disruptions that bring suppressed truths to light, challenging both women to confront what they hide and what they reveal. For lesbian viewers, Kylie's situation can feel deeply relatable in the sense that her desire exists in a private space until it is unexpectedly seen, forcing her to negotiate shame and authenticity simultaneously. The act of losing control, though unintended, reflects how queer women often lose control over their narratives in a heteronormative world, where their identities are misinterpreted, sexualized, or exposed without consent. The misunderstanding in the scene parallels the social misunderstanding of female desire in general. Women's pleasure, especially queer pleasure, is rarely treated as neutral or ordinary. When a man expresses desire, society frames it as natural, but when two women share intimacy, it is often framed as taboo, performative, or something that requires justification. This film, even through comedy, places two women in a setting that traditionally suppresses desire, an academic environment, and allows the collision of intellect and intimacy to occur, highlighting the humanity behind both. Women across orientations may relate to the emotional undercurrent of the scene, the constant balancing act between composure and authenticity. Kylie's professional demeanor represents the persona many women adopt in public spaces, while her hidden desires represent the parts of self that must be carefully managed to avoid judgment. The fact that she is a professor, a position of both respect and surveillance, adds to the tension. Society often imposes contradictory expectations on women. They must be intelligent but not intimidating, attractive but not provocative, approachable but not vulnerable. For queer women, these contradictions double, because their existence already challenges the heterosexual framework that society uses to define female worth. Kylie's brief moment of vulnerability, accidentally triggered by Aubry, symbolizes what happens when authenticity surfaces in environments that are not designed to contain it. From a cultural standpoint, this short film taps into a long lineage of queer cinema that uses humor and awkwardness to explore taboo subjects. The comedic misunderstanding is a classic narrative device, yet here it becomes a commentary on how queer intimacy often unfolds through accident and miscommunication. Many lesbians and bisexual women recall their first encounters being accidental, uncertain, or misunderstood. Gestures that could be interpreted as either friendly or romantic, conversations charged with unsaid meaning, or situations that reveal attraction unexpectedly. Aubry's innocence and curiosity, paired with Kylie's embarrassment and eventual honesty, reflect the emotional choreography of discovering mutual attraction in a world that rarely offers scripts for it. Their dynamic challenges the traditional teacher-student trope not through exploitation, but through mutual learning. Both women come to understand something about themselves that they hadn't before. The question of why society reacts negatively to two women in love ties directly into the historical policing of female intimacy. Throughout history, women have been allowed emotional closeness with one another as long as it remained desexualized. Female friendships were celebrated for their purity, but when that intimacy crossed into desire, it was quickly erased or punished. In literature and film, women's affection for one another was often coded, whispered, or redirected into tragedy. Even now, mainstream media often reduces lesbian relationships to spectacle or subtext, rather than treating them as normal expressions of love. The discomfort society feels is not just about sexuality, it's about power. Two women in love threaten patriarchal structures because their relationship operates outside the male gaze and refuses male validation. The notion that women might find fulfillment with each other destabilizes the social order built on male centrality. Thus, depictions of lesbian intimacy, whether emotional or symbolic, become acts of resistance simply by existing. In My Pesky Student Has the Wrong Remote, the physical remote becomes an allegory for control: who has it, who loses it, and what happens when control changes hands. Kylie initially wields control over her environment. She's the professor, she's the authority, she's the one dictating the pace. But once Aubry unknowingly takes the remote, that power dynamic flips. This reversal mirrors how queer relationships often challenge hierarchical structures, replacing dominance and submission with mutual discovery. Yet it also captures a broader truth about queerness, that identity and desire are not always under one's conscious control. Coming out, falling in love, or realizing attraction often happens unexpectedly, through small moments that trigger awareness in ways one cannot predict. The remote mishap becomes a metaphor for the unpredictable nature of self-revelation. Lesbian and bisexual viewers might also recognize the duality of fear and relief that Kylie experiences when she is found out. On one hand, being seen can be terrifying, particularly when one's professional life or reputation feels at stake. On the other hand, being seen authentically can be liberating, especially if the observer, Aubry in this case, responds not with judgment, but with acceptance. Aubry's intrigue and open-mindedness represent the evolving cultural shift toward more fluid, compassionate understandings of sexuality among younger generations. Rather than reacting with shame, she meets Kylie's vulnerability with curiosity and empathy. This is emblematic of how queer representation has shifted. Older queer characters often carry trauma and secrecy, while younger ones bring lightness and acceptance, bridging the generational gap that still exists in real life between women who came of age under different social pressures. Beyond sexuality, the film also captures a broader feminist narrative about emotional honesty and bodily autonomy. The professor's struggle is not just about desire, it's about the right to have private pleasure without it being politicized. Female pleasure, especially queer pleasure, has historically been dismissed or stigmatized as frivolous or deviant. The comedic framing of Kylie's predicament invites audiences to laugh, but the laughter is layered. It's not mockery, but recognition. It's the humor that arises from shared vulnerability, from the universal experience of being caught off guard by our own humanity. Comedy has always been one of the safest ways to introduce uncomfortable truths, and here it works as both a shield and a mirror. Women watching this scene, regardless of sexuality, might relate to the unintentional exposure of something they meant to keep private, whether it's a feeling, an insecurity, or a secret dream. The anxiety of being seen and the simultaneous yearning to be understood is a universal emotional truth. For queer women, that truth is magnified by history. Every small moment of exposure, accidental or deliberate, echoes the larger process of coming out, a moment that can be terrifying but also transformative. The dynamic between Kylie and Aubry illustrates that queer revelation need not end in shame. It can also be met with connection, compassion, and even humor. The beauty of this story lies in its subtle defiance. It does not present queerness as tragedy or fetish, but as an ordinary part of life's awkwardness. By situating the narrative in a classroom, a symbol of order, intellect, and professionalism, the film challenges the dichotomy between mind and body, reason and emotion. It reminds viewers that women, including queer women, contain multitudes. They can be educators and lovers, composed and chaotic, rational and spontaneous. This complexity has long been denied to female characters in film, who are often flattened into archetypes. Here, Kylie is allowed to be all of it at once, embarrassed yet empowered, flustered yet brave. Aubry, in turn, is not merely an object of curiosity, but a mirror reflecting a future where curiosity itself is no longer punished. Ultimately, My Pesky Student Has the Wrong Remote is less about its humorous premise and more about what that premise reveals, that control and vulnerability coexist, that accidents can uncover truth, and that queer womanhood, no matter how it manifests, deserves space for laughter, honesty, and self-discovery. The film turns an intimate misunderstanding into a larger meditation on visibility, consent, and the courage to be seen. Its symbolism, wrapped in comedy, speaks to every woman who has ever feared being misunderstood, and to every queer woman who has ever found liberation in that misunderstanding. It suggests that even when society fumbles the remote, pressing the wrong buttons and sending the wrong signals, love, understanding, and humor still find a way to connect.